Greetings and welcome to today's webinar. We have a special guest joining us, Guru Ramamoorthy, who is the Vice President and Global Head of Network Architecture, Engineering, and Operations for S&P Global. As a valued AppViewX customer, Guru will be presenting about how AppViewX has helped S&P Global achieve agility through application delivery automation. Now, before we get started and I turn it over to Guru to tell his story, I want to let you know that we highly encourage questions and we'll leave time at the end to answer them. To ask a question, just submit yours in the question field in BrightTalk. Now let's get started. Guru, welcome, and the stage is now yours.
All right, Christian, thank you so much for the great introduction. Hey, everybody. My name is Guruprasad Ramamoorthy. I lead the Global Network Architecture, Engineering, and Operations for S&P Global. For the next 30 minutes, we'll talk about how within S&P Global we achieved agility in our application delivery journey, and more importantly, unveiling some of the secrets of the high-performing network team at S&P Global. With that, we'll jump into the session. Talking about a company a bit, I'm sure many of you know about S&P Global. We are a leading provider of independent ratings, benchmark, analytics, and data to capital and commodity markets. To do something of that scale, we operate in about 100 offices. Our applications are hosted in 51 data centers, 4 multi-cloud providers, and 37,000 employees work relentlessly hard to deliver that essential intelligence to worldwide. And think about an infrastructure of this scale, which is hosted in 51 data centers, 4 multi-cloud providers, thousands of applications, several petabytes of data, and all of this have to be delivered in a much more curated way to our end customer in order for them to make the critical decision in their process, because the data plays a critical role in our ecosystem, and we empower our customers, governments, bankers, and a lot many people in the process to get that intelligence in their hand. And 24/7 we have to do this in order for them to do that, create that intelligence out of the process. Moving on, let's talk about our approach to network automation. I'll call this as an industry-leading strategy. The reason because historically we have all talked about what is a problem statement and how do we address a problem statement. And over the years, we all have lived in that world of let's define a problem statement, let's address the problem statement. I think we're all living in the world of defining the user experience, because we are not in front of a users anymore. The users are remote, the business is remote, everything is happening remotely in a much more hybrid environment, which means essentially the fundamental user experience is changing, right? I mean, we cannot say this is the problem statement and we're going to address that. And because the user experience is changing, they were in office and now they are remote and now they are in a hybrid work environment. The construct of how we pick a technology to do automation, how we select a technology to do this automation, how we execute the process has to change. That's where the mindset shift has to come from. Hey, in the past, we all have defined a problem statement and then we delivered the outcome. I think the new approaches are let's define what's the ultimate user experience and then start building technologies, start constructing technologies that will meet the user experiences, because that's where the conversation of empathy and compassion comes into the play, is because you're not in front of the users all the time trying to understand the problem. And in the past, many times the legacy approaches in defining a problem statement, either using a self-reporting techniques, I'll send you a survey, give me a feedback. Those things are not going to work anymore in the post-pandemic era. I mean, it is important to create that compassionate experience for our end users. By doing that, one will be able to deliver the trust, and the whole team who's building the technology will have to operate with the mindset of growth mindset in order to kind of say, hey, if I run this technology and if I build this technology, if I am also an end user of this technology, how do I want this, right? So the combination of defining that end state user experience and bringing in that compassion will take away all the legacy approaches of defining a problem statement, will also take away all the legacy approaches of defining a problem itself. Rather, defining the end state is very critical. By doing this, now we get into the next state of what automation tool that we select. We all have to recognize that we are living in the world of federated tools, federated automation. There is no one tool that can do everything at all. It is important to understand that the technology and the IT is becoming heavily federated, and so as the tools are getting federated, and so as the automation scope is getting federated. And it is extremely important to find who is the best of the breed in that space and pick them and build on to deliver the results. And many times I've seen organizations spending a lot of time and effort in rationalizing the tool, putting a project together in tools rationalization and whatnot. But I think what's more important is pick the best of the breed, deliver the results, and create a ecosystem of tool. And that's what we practiced in S&P Global. We pick the best of the breed, such as AppViewX for our ADC automation and our CLM automation. And there are other tools which does other technologies for the automation. And we are all living in the world of API and the API ecosystem, and tool chain the tool to talk to each other to create both downstream and upstream integration. And also, more importantly, tool chain only when you need it. You don't need to tool chain every tool at first place. And that end state of tool chaining the entire CI/CD doesn't have to be perfect in the beginning, is because you have a user, the user needs a solution, the solution comes with a compassion, and there's an automation tool that can deliver the results and earn the trust. But of course, incrementally, by tool chaining this with a service now can give a better user experience. A tool chaining this with a CMDB can provide better data. But to me, that's an incremental improvement. So it is important to pick the best of the breed, and it is important to understand what are the tools that you have, and first fit the tool for a purpose, then eventually tool chain all your tools with a greater API ecosystem so they all can talk to each other, so that there's less time spent in rationalizing and generalizing that one tool can do it all. And after we pick the tool with a purpose, and after we decide when to tool chain, it is important to understand when you pick a technology. Let's say in this case, we're going to automate a load balancer. We approached everything with the MACD, move, add, change, and delete approach, which means you pick a technology, automate the entire ecosystem of the technology in order to simplify the end user experience. Because you don't want to go to an end user asking for a problem statement again. Hey, I finished your first problem statement. Tell me what's your next problem. Then you go third time asking for a problem. Then you go fourth time asking for a problem. Look at it from an end user perspective. Somebody constantly approaching you with a problem statement, and from an end user perspective, perception is it looks like you don't understand my entire problem. How do we make sure that we can bring in the entire problem statement into one single package and see that as a whole holistic end user experience that they would like to see at the end of the house, and deliver that as a MACD approach. And this is what we practice in S&P Global. We pick a technology in network, and we do the full MACD approach in order to achieve everything that we need at the end state. And over time, we built a great continuous feedback process in order to drive the improvements thereafter, instead of going and constantly bothering the end users asking for problems. Rather, we recognize their problems through the continuous feedback process. We recognize their problem at the beginning of the approach so that we kind of deliver the entire thing. And last but not least, when you are finished with the larger MACD process, it is important that we start measuring the value, is because there's an investment made in this effort. At one point in time, the business leaders are going to ask, show me the value, show me the results, show me the outcome. So it is extremely important that we start measuring the launch time. how many number of times you are able to successfully launch your automation, and how many number of times we are able to successfully reuse the automation capability that we have done. So that's the larger approach that we have taken in order to make sure that we methodologically address the approach to network automation, and more importantly start measuring success when we are ready to launch. This goes back to a fundamental SpaceX principle. Think about what they're measuring in their website. If you go into spacex.com, they're simply measuring number of launches, number of relaunches, and what the payload they can take. I think we took the simple metrics and applied it within our own principle and say, hey, we picked the technology, we finished move, add, change, delete automation. Now we are delivering this to the end user. Now against this, all the four big use cases, how many of those use cases can launch more number of times, how many of those use cases can relaunch as many number of times, and what portion of this further can be reused for various other use cases in order to build future personas and future expanded use case, which will help us drive down the cost. Otherwise, if we end up doing one use case at a time, then the cost of the automation is going to be seen as high because it is not delivering value. Rather, pick a technology, fully automated, and then go into the field and start launching your services so that you can measure the success and measure the launch times. And more importantly, building the continuous feedback process during your launch cycles is extremely critical, is because you want to make sure that you're able to deliver and as well as gain back the results. Moving on, the strategy further. It is extremely important to understand user personas in this journey. In the previous section, I talked about creating that sustainable user experience. What does sustainable user experience meaning? In our business, in a large enterprise like S&P Global, we deal with a lot of different user personas, and we'll talk about each of them, what they ask. Speaking with an app owner, or speaking with a product owner, or speaking with anybody at a executive level, most of the time their expectations: can I understand my application at a 360-degree view? Where is my application hosted? Is it active, or is it active passive, or is it active backup? The people at the app owner level, product owner level, are very keen on understanding my application view, my performance of my application, my output of my application, and whatnot, so on and so forth. And further to that, if you go talk to an application developer, their requirements are completely different from a product owner. And their ask is, I would like to get visibility into my apps. I'm responsible for one application. I don't want to see everything. I don't want to access the load balancers directly. Give me the keys to the kingdom so that I can manage my configuration in a much more granular way. And within the app developer, there are several type of people who wants to do this in a different way. So which means the ask from the app developer is granular access to the each of the individual load balancer configuration which are specific to their apps. And there are types of app developers. Some app developer wants to consume everything as code. From their eyes, everything is code. Their software is a code, the infrastructure is a code, their entire ecosystem is code. So being able to deliver um, the entire infrastructure as a code, and particularly in this case, the load balancer service as a code, so that they could tool chain that into their CI/CD pipeline and further deliver as a code. Certain app developers, listen, I don't want to waste time in building and writing and maintaining your code. Your code is your code, but I would like to consume your product or your infrastructure as a service. So which means, do you have a great technology? Do you have a great tool? And I have a software that I'm building on. I'm building a web application that needs to consume a load balancer, but I don't want to build code because those app developers are thinking they would like to use their quality time in building products that's more meaningful to the business and more meaningful to the end customer of S&P Global. Rather, they would like to go in a much more self-service way, but they wanted that to be even nimble, not like old style ITIL days where you put in a ticket, you wait for 3 days and whatnot. They wanted that to be a more of a infrastructure as a service, but with much more UI. And all of this, the expectation of an application developer is, I want to deploy all of this in a code in a minute. Either I consume as a code or I consume as a service. I come to service now or I come into AppViewX. Doesn't matter where I come. The expectation of app developers deploy changes in a minute. And the other set of user persona that we deal with is site reliability engineers, nothing but traditional application operations people who are maintaining thousands of apps in respective business units and business functions. And their ask is exactly same as app developer, but even further granularity in managing the configuration, because they have a better understanding of IT, they have a better understanding of application, they have a better understanding of the entire product, how it has to operate. So which means their level of access is far beyond and even more higher from an app developer perspective. But they should be able to even run operations effectively. If an application is down in the middle of the night, and the ask from a site reliability engineers are, can they fail over an application from a data center A to data center B and the vice versa, without having a need to call an IT team to do that. And using AppUX today, they are able to do that and deploy those changes in a minute, so that they can do all of that. And more importantly, the core of how it is all done, and the network engineering, the network operations team played a vital role in understanding these user personas in our larger approach on the journey. We sat with app and product owners and developers and the SRE team in giving them what they need. And more importantly, that's where the role of a network engineer and the network operations is shifting. In the past, the role of a network engineer have to build, maintain, manage, control, protect, secure. So they had a lot of roles to play, but we are all shifting our roles from being able to build, maintain, manage, and control, and to be able to influence the business teams and application owner. Hey, we have a technology like AppUX. It can provide granular access for each of your roles and take ownership of what you are responsible for, so that we are empowering and enabling them in giving them what they need and giving them the keys to their own respective golden kingdoms, so that they can even run their processes, their technologies, their operations much more visibly. Over the past 2.5 years, the network engineering team at S&P Global played a extremely significant role in building the AppUX technology, setting up the granular configuration RBAC controls for several hundred product teams, and creating that environment where the design and deployment of projects can happen in minutes, because we have been embarking a cloud journey for over 3 years. And in the journey, and web application requires a load balancer function at the core. A certificate is probably the foundation to the entire process. And having them the ability to create a whip and modify a whip, or probably delete a configuration, it created a greater agility in delivering projects. And more importantly, the vision was to enable and empower our developers so that they could be even more highly productive and they feel that they are in control of their destiny. And last but not least, the network operations team and the site reliability engineers blended very well. They worked hand in hand, supported each other, and that way we are not passing the tickets, passing the buck, and bouncing the tickets between the team. Because while network operations team can see every single whip in their UI, the respective product based site reliability engineers can see their own whips. So when the products merge, when the product blend, to be able to manage the larger portfolio of all the configurations in a single pane of glass, looking at the performance, looking at the insight, and being able to operate even more effectively in the operations role, has been a significant game changer in our network operations portfolio. And more importantly, those engineers today rely heavily on AppUX to modify changes very quickly in the event of an incident, in the event of a change request, and more importantly, many times in supporting our SRE teams and app teams during the release windows and release cycles. So throughout this journey, what is the key is understanding the user personas and building that role-based access control and giving the keys to their respective golden kingdom and enabling and empowering the developers in their journey will help lead to a greater success in building out a perfect load balancer as a service, and that way we achieve greater agility in our entire process. Moving on, we talked about approach, we talked about user personas, but let's also understand and recognize what are the common industry challenge. And these are the challenges that we did face 3 years before. And when we defined the approach to automation, when we started engaging with our business, when we started engaging with our application teams, understanding those challenges, these are some of the very common challenges that came through. Hey, I don't understand my application delivery configurations. Can you give me access to my load balancer? Yeah, we can, but the risk of opening and access to a load balancer is you just don't have one product sitting there. You have probably over several hundred products that are hosted there. So one bad configuration could lead to affecting several hundred products. That's why in the past, the role of an IT was protecting the core infrastructure rather providing the service. And that's shifting because of the technology such as AppViewX is now helping us to giving us the ability to slice all of them. And more importantly, the lack of application centric visibility. The applications that are hosted, that are using the load balancer services, which are behind the ADC infrastructure, it's hard to understand, is my application external, internal, how it is hosted, how is the wide IP configuration is done, how is the member configurations are done. Getting that application centric visibility was one of the biggest challenges that was faced by the application team. And more importantly, understanding what is application security, what kind of cipher configurations are done, what kind of SSL profiles are done, what kind of I rules are configured. So these are common challenges that most of the act teams, most of the security teams, most of the frontline support teams have spoken during our engagement. And I believe these are the common industry challenges that's been spoken across the industry. And everybody's trying to understand how do I address all these challenges. Moving on to the next slide. And in the following slide, these are also a common industry expectations. When we sat and when we developed these user personas, the ask is very clear in the three large buckets. When we developed the strategy and when we converted the strategy into user personas, and then when we recognize the challenges, the fact is addressing these challenges in a three large buckets, which means how as an organization we can deliver an unified view in our application delivery lifecycle. We're talking about several hundred load balancers constantly providing the performance and the delivery of the application at a better scale. And giving that unified application delivery is extremely critical because think about a frontline support team such as network operations and site reliability engineers, right? Pre-pandemic, they were all sitting in the office, working, collaborating, probably looking at big console monitors and monitor all of that. Today, they're all not there in office. They're all in a hybrid workplace, and it's hard to get a unified view if you don't have a good tool like AppViewX, so that you can build a greater front-end view to understand which member server is having a problem, which wide IP is having a problem. Is your application doing well in East or is your application doing well in West region? So it's important to build that unified application delivery model. And more importantly, the visibility and the access and the automation. When we build that unified view, the frontline support team, the app owner, product owner, had got a greater visibility and more importantly the automation in achieving the agility. We spoke a lot about the MACD approach. When we pick the technology to automate, and when we choose the technology such as AppViewX to deliver automation on top of it, and when we attempted saying, hey, we are not going to come to you and say, we will give you only ability to create a web, but we will come 8 sprints later or 16 sprints later and give you a change and a modify feature that terribly impacts the end user experience is because it's as equal as having a broken arm saying, hey, I'm half fixing your experience, but I'm not fully done yet. But rather, we took an approach of heads down, focus, take a MACD approach, so that entire piece gets done. And then when we go to the end user and say, now you can create, modify, delete, change, do all functions using AppViewX, that's where the user experience changes. And last but not least, the security teams had a greater visibility into how application teams are changing their application, because we're all living in the world of continuous integration, continuous delivery, and now world is all moving towards continuous everything, which means the security of the application have to be even more adaptive. By bringing AppUX, it gave a greater visibility for our security teams to understand what's changing in our application environment and how it is handled in a load balancer ecosystem, and how AppUX can basically paint the larger picture to monitor and maintain, manage, and protect the larger ecosystem. Moving on. Let's talk about launch times. I'm sure this is a common question that's being asked within the large enterprises. This is a common question that's being asked in any large automation program. And this is also a common question when you wanted to start measuring your productivity, efficiency, and SLA and whatnot, right? How much time do you take to deploy a certificate and a load balancer service or an application, right? There are only four answers to it. Either you do this in a day or less than a day, few hours and few minutes. And it is important to measure these launch times in each of your ecosystem and ask your team this simple question. And please also ask your team to come up with one of these answers that is a leading indicator to understand where does your team stand and what do you want to be and where does your user wants to be. Many of your users might say, I want this to be in a few minutes. That's reason because they are doing CI and CD and they're consuming infrastructure as a code. But in many places, we have bolted our existing processes to the traditional ITSM world, assuming it's delivering as a code. But uh, it's an opportunity to kind of revisit those traditional ITSM model and figure out what's a best user persona and who needs to consume in a day and who needs to consume in a minute. You don't there is not everybody wants to consume everything in a minute. There are certain users who are perfectly fine to consume certain services in a day, and there are certain developers who wants to consume in hours, and there are certain people who wants to consume in minutes, literally, right? So which is why it is extremely important to understand your user base, understand the user personas, and then deliver the capability accordingly, either by a day or hours or minutes. Because if we kind of try to do everything in a minute, then we are over tool chaining, we are overly complicating the automation. So the answer to this should be tied to the resulting end user experience that you wanted to define in the beginning, saying, if I deliver this automation, I'm going to deliver the entire move, add, change, delete approach, all of this in a minute, or probably two of this in minutes, two of this in hours. It's extremely a blended process that one has to take a holistic approach in putting user experience and the launch times in parallel, and try to do a perfect justification between what you want to do and how you want to deliver each of your services. And let's go into the next slide to share S&P Global's journey and how did we achieve all of this in the multi-year partnership with AppViewX team in delivering the certificate lifecycle management and ADC automation, where we are today and where we envision to be. Talking about defining that end user experience and picking the best of the breed technology, and more importantly, tool chaining whenever it is appropriate, and more importantly, talking about the MACD approach that we wanted to take. All of those conversations essentially kickstarted in early 2019 when S&P Global and AppViewX met for the first time and talked about this is the end user experience we're talking about, and this is how we are going to go, and this is how we are going to approach the whole ecosystem. As you can see, the curve is maturing, from the time we started and from where we are, and we are also envisioning where we wanted to be. It started with simple certificate lifecycle CLM adoption in 2020, where like every large enterprises, our goal was to improve the overall availability, improve the effectiveness of certificate lifecycle management, because managing thousands of certificates manually in an Excel sheet is humanly an impossible task. So that's how we brought the certificate lifecycle management module of AppViewX to toolchain it. It resulted in a increased availability, and it also improved our effective way of managing it. And today that entire process is managed by a machine completely. Like I said, the tool automatically notifies when the certificate would expire. The tool would automatically renew the certificate in many places. The tool would automatically uh, call out for actions that needs to be taken in order to do all of it. And we moved from adoption to automation in 2021, where when we said, hey, we can now deliver a greater availability, but can we also deliver the certificates at the same speed, from days to minute? This is where the persona of the user came into action, because the time of 2020 and 2021 was extremely critical even for S&P Global, because we were also moving our applications into the cloud. As you can assume, a large cloud migrations will have a lot of changes to take place, including certificate changes. The user personas and the expectations were very clear. They want things to be delivered from days to minutes, not in hours. So we spoke to our developers to understand, what do you need? Is it hours or is it minutes? They categorically said it's minutes. And so we used certificate lifecycle module automation capability to build on to delivering both our internal certificate, external certificate, all of this in a minutes. And today it happens completely in a zero touch capability, where you go into a module, put your requirements, submit it. Probably in less than 5 minutes the certificate is going to be right in front of you, and then you decide when to deploy. And then as we got here, we also looked at what's the ecosystem we are dealing with. Yeah, you got a certificate. The certificate is typically installed in a web server, app server, and more importantly, because we are from a network space, we saw a significant amount of certificates are being installed in the load balancer as well. That's when we decided, it appears, the back and forth conversation of this life cycle of a ticket is touching a load balancer a lot. And then we decided, hey, let's bring in a way to build a greater application view by adopting the ADC module of AppViewX. And we brought in, and that's where again the user persona conversation kicked in, to understand, what do you want to see? What is the most important factors that one would like to see? And people from app owner and product owner said, I would like to see a performance of my application. That's great. And we onboarded all our load balancer ecosystem into the ADC module, and then we started segregating that by each product. And then we went to the product owner and said, now you can see where is your application hosted. Probably at 9 o'clock in the morning it's running in a data center A. 11 o'clock you hit an incident, and 11:05 one of your team member failed over the application to the data center B, and all of that was visible to a product owner, in a single pane of glass. And then we advanced that adoption to automation, where upgrading the platform to 20.3, which is the perfect timing. That's where all the greater automation capability of AppUX came into action in the ADC module. And we took the similar move, add, change, delete approach in our automation, where we were able to visualize the end state experience, which means we looked at our own set of ServiceNow queue, which is maintained, managed, delivered by my team. And we said, if we are the one who is servicing the end user ecosystem, what are we doing our job? And then we looked at our own queue without a need to go sit in front of a developer asking, what do you need? We looked at our own problem statements, and that was clearly a message that we are constantly creating something, we are constantly modifying, adding and deleting something, because the applications are moving into the cloud, applications are shifting from one cloud to multi-cloud, constant rigor of changes were going on. And then the only question that we asked our end user is, do you like to see these changes happening in hours or minutes or days? They again said, yes, when you can deliver a certificate in minutes, can you also deliver my uh, load balancer configuration in minutes? So we kind of said, yes, it's a perfect blend, because when a developer wants to build an application, and we had a unique program called Vision to Value within S&P Global, which means ability for a business owner to envision a product in the morning, and can they deliver the full product in the evening, and think of that product as a web application, could be, and then ability for a developer to stand up a Java application and create a certificate to it and create a load balancer configuration, all of this in a zero touch, and deliver all of this in a minute, and turn around at the end of the business day and say, hey, you asked for a product, I built the product and delivered all of this, including the underlying infrastructure is delivered at a zero touch. Today we do all of this at scale, in a larger S&P Global ecosystem using ADC Plus. But what changed in 2022 is essentially the merger. S&P Global merged with IHS Market, and then as a team, we inherited a 2x more footprint, and that's why in the beginning I said we are today operating in 50 plus data centers, 100 plus offices, thousands of application, and over four multi-cloud providers. As you can see, there's a huge growth in the footprint. And how do we now deliver faster business value? I'm sure all of you have driven in highways, right? You tend to pay a toll to drive in a faster lane, and that's the same strategy network team took. Hey, we got the technology, we know how we did this in 2020 and 2021. Now I am ready to go pay the fast lane ticket and drive even faster to my destination. So we went to the business and said, we're going to rinse and repeat our playbook that we did in 2020 and 2021, expand the entire capability of AppViewX into the new ecosystem that we inherited, so that we can deliver value much faster, much nimble, so that we don't need to reinvent all the wheel. So we pretty much brought in AppViewX at a perfect time right after the merger. We were able to lift and shift majority of the pre-existing automation and certificate lifecycle management, ADC automation completely. And today we have reached an important milestone of to be able to deliver all of those capabilities within the historical IHSM environment that my team manages from days to minute. Thousands of developers and thousands of app owners and SRE teams today, they are able to configure their systems almost in minutes, and which is a big step that we have taken by empowering our developers and the SRE teams right after the merger, and they're extremely happy with what we have accomplished in such a short time. And let's talk about target set. Uh, as you can see, by at the end of 2022, we have achieved a very significant milestone in partnership with AppViewX team. But what's going in the future? I spoke about S&P Global moving into a cloud, moving into multi-cloud and whatnot. But we are also moving further ahead in our journey of abstracting our entire ecosystem and moving into a serverless ecosystem, where with the adoption of Kubernetes and whatnot. And we are actively working with AppViewX team to kind of develop that strategy and roadmap, so that when we start growing into the larger serverless ecosystem, we should be able to manage certificate into the Kubernetes world. We should be able to manage load balancer configurations into the Kubernetes world. And it has to be cloud agnostic, multi-cloud agnostic, and serverless architecture agnostics. Those are the roadmap that we are actively reviewing. And more importantly, when we are reviewing, we're not looking at it as a problem statement. We're even further looking ahead, that as an opportunity to plan ahead even before it becomes a problem, or even before it becomes a user experience challenge. We are way ahead in the planning process of defining the target state for a larger serverless ecosystem, so that we could deliver the similar move, add, change, delete experience within the serverless ecosystem. And then our developers, when they are ready to refactor their application from a existing model in a cloud to a serverless model, then we go and swing in and say, here is how now you can manage your Kubernetes ecosystem and their configurations even more effectively, which gives them the journey of uh, traveling from 2019 to 2023, and the experience is very consistent and even more seamless. And more importantly, the agility is the key, right? They're using the same tool and technology that we first adopted in 2021, and they're still living and breathing in the same ecosystem in 2023. The foundational layer hasn't changed, but the foundational layer has grown across several stack that continues to give them that agility to consume the service in a much more nimble, faster way, which enables them to deploy code almost same day. This is where the role of a network engineer in the new world is shifting to a highly influential role, so that we could influence the developer and by giving them the keys to their own kingdoms and empowering and enabling them so that they could deploy code and they could deploy their applications almost same day in a few hours in a day, to so that they can deliver the business value to their customers. Over to the next slide. With that, Christian, over to you, and happy to take any questions.
Yeah. Thanks, Guru, for a fantastic presentation. It's great to hear the value AppViewX certificate lifecycle and application delivery automation is delivering to S&P Global. Yeah, we really appreciate the partnership. So this is a fantastic presentation of just really kind of understanding the value that you've been getting from this relationship over the years, and then where you're going as well. So we do have a few questions, Guru. We want to start off with
Sure.
what what was the catalyst that really drove you to start looking at application delivery automation?
I think the key is the journey. To me, what's more important is the journey in the process and the ability to connect the dependency of an application and understanding what our team is doing. When we first started our journey in 2019, we solved how we deliver our certificates, but then we looked at where is the certificate actually going and sitting, right? The applications, the certificates that were generated, that were exactly going and sitting in the load balancers. So it's evident that certificate and the ADC have to work together. And what AppUX has done is building two great strategic products, both CLM Plus and ADC Plus. And to me, it's a perfect marriage that came in for any customer like S&P Global, and marry them together so that within a larger AppUX ecosystem, I could generate a certificate in the module A, seamlessly bring that in the module B, and then hold it there and install it in my load balancer. I think it's the key is uh, connecting the dots and making sure that we understand the ecosystem and what are you doing with the output of the first product, led us to kind of make a decision on the second product, which is how we end up tool chaining ADC.
Yeah, it's great. You really saw the two different products going hand in hand together with CLM and then the ADC automation. Yeah. Thanks, Guru, for the answer there. Um, Next question: Can you share a specific example uh, of automation that has really benefited your teams? It could be with certificate lifecycle management. It could be with application delivery services. But is there a specific example around automation that's really benefited the team?
I think the key is in the last 2 years, the speed at which that we migrated our applications into the cloud, and that we are still migrating some of them into the cloud. Uh, there's constantly a change, and there's constantly a change in the environment, and developers were heavily involved in the migration process. So, in order for them to deliver those cloud migration strategies much faster, even nimble enough, and go further in their journey, we have to empower them through automation. We cannot tell them, "Hey, you're," and look at from a network team standpoint. There's one central team, and if we have to service probably 10 business units and probably 500 Scrum team, it's practically not viable to support everybody in a 24-hour clock, right? The solution to that scale is automation, and more importantly, giving their own keys to their kingdom with a proper granular RBAC control and say, hey, you are from business unit A who is responsible for managing an application B. I'll give you access to your own application ecosystem so that you can manage, control, maintain, create, modify, delete. So that we were able to train so many developers in our organization and so many SRE teams in our organization, and they were extremely happy that they got access to their own ecosystem. Now they are even effectively managing their migration process and all of it, which was the key to our decision making of how we got here.
Yeah, when you and I talked in preparation for this, and you talked about providing self-servicing to the different personas that you went through in your earlier slides, that was really kind of a key to enabling those teams to do more. The the next question, Guru, is ultimately ultimately how did you find AppViewX, and why did you choose AppViewX for these projects?
That's an interesting question. I think kudos to the AppViewX team. I knew them uh, for about a decade now, and over the past years, I've constantly looked at how AppViewX is constantly uh, constantly and relentlessly working hard in developing a greater product for large enterprises, and I have followed through, and including AppViewX team followed through, and I'm glad finally we were able to be the customer of AppViewX and being able to adopt and helping us in our partnership and journey.
Great, and obviously we're seeing joint reciprocal results here. With having a great customer like S&P Global, and the results that you and your team have been achieving. One last question, Guru, and then looks like we'll wrap up today. By automating these processes, is your team able to be more proactive versus reactive when delivering applications?
Absolutely, there is so much of proactiveness has come into the process. Uh, it's an interesting conversation when we get into this proactiveness, right? We all have seen the strategy of reactive to proactive to predictive. Uh, the world of predictability is very hard, is because that's when all this machine learning, yeah, artificial intelligence comes into the play. But that's more of business centric. But in the process of reactive to proactive, we have done a lot of tools and technologies. We have implemented a number of tools. That's why I said in one of the approach that we are taking, in order to get into this proactive way of approaching, number one, you need to tool chain all your ecosystem to get a granular visibility of what's going on in your ecosystem. That's where the tool chain, when it is appropriate, is extremely critical. And because we did the work from 2019 to 2021, over the last 1 year, my team spent significant amount of time in tool chaining AppViewX with other downstream and upstream tools so that we can abstract the key information from various tools, and then we can put all the proactive data sets and make some intelligent decisions. And more importantly, because we turned over a lot of granular access and granular controls and granular way of doing things into the respective app owners, we gained our own capacity as a team, and we were able to reinvest the time and the effort that we gained back, because we are not doing any more traditional web provisioning. And our teams are now started looking at how can I make my load balancer performance better, how can I make my application performance better, can I take this into a much more next state. So by gaining our own capacity, we were able to reinvest in putting our time and energy in building that proactive capability, proactive dashboards, intent based monitoring alerts and whatnot. And that's where all this tool chain integration and tool chain ecosystem integration is extremely critical to create that proactive data sets.
That's great. Yeah, and better, and it all rolls up to a better user experience, and a better revenue stream for the company as well.
Absolutely. I mean, when you have a greater availability of your product, and for a company like S&P Global, think about, we are delivering essential intelligence worldwide, and we can and there is no country uh, where we can assume, hey, somebody is not operating at this time. There's some country which is operating 24 hours around the clock if you go around the globe, right? And we are in a critical role of delivering that essential intelligence across the globe. And to do that, our applications need to be highly available, and our applications need to deliver the data through several ways and several means, and empowering that ecosystem and providing that performance and visibility and granularity is core to how we deliver our applications and intelligence to our end customers.
Yeah, the security, and the availability is so critical.
True.
Well, Guru, that's the end of our questions. So it looks like we've come to the end of the webinar today. Once again, thank you for being a being a part of this today, and thank you for being a customer of AppViewX. It was a great presentation. And just want to let the audience know, to learn a little bit more about AppViewX, if you go to www.appviewx.com, you can learn a lot more about the products that Guru has just presented. But Guru, thank you once again.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Okay. Okay. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.